fabled inscription. Despite the absence of literary or physical evidence to corroborate Dio's fable, traditionalists fanatically rely on relics as verification. Their conviction is served by a delayed and dubious discovery from the remaining rubble at the Piazza di Sciarra site. In 1641, almost a century after Ligorio recorded the arches of the Aqua Virgo, a fragmentary inscription was allegedly found. Lawrence Keppy describes this discovery as amongst the most valuable epigraphic records we have for the early history of Roman Britain. This would be true were there not significant flaws in the discovery story which expose further fraudulence. Under the patronage of Viscount Parker, Edward Wright travelled to Rome during the early 1720s and published his observations and experiences on his return. When recounting his visits to the Barberini Palace and his promenades around its luxurious gardens, Wright recalled observing a bridge, which was built by Bernini in imitation of the ruins of an old one. So convincing was this imitation that a very ingenious contemporary of Wright's, who had studied many years in Rome, architecture as well as painting, could not be convinced that it was not a real ruin, so well is it represented. Wright reports that set within this magnificent imitation was an inscription related to our nation, and so transcribed it: Tiberius Claudio Caesar Augusto, Pontifici Maximus, Trubunica potestas novi consule imperator pater patriae. Reges Britanniae absqualla factura domuerit, gentesque Barabbas primus indicio subegit. In the 1695 edition of his Roma Vetus AC Recens, Alexandri Donati supplemented his report on the fragmentary inscription which he saw at the Barberini Palace. However, this inscription appears to have differed significantly from the one which Wright observed. Donati provides the following version, showing the antique in bold type alongside his smaller modern reparation: Tiberio Claudio Cesare Augusto Germanico, Pontifici Maximus, Trubunica potestas novi consule imperator pater patriae, Senatus Populus, Romanus, Reges Britanni perdueles, sine ulla iactura celeriter, ceperit gentesque extremarum orcard primus indicio factor imperio addi. Serit. There is a fundamental problem which affects both sources' evidence. This is besides the immediate and obvious questions of how the Attic inscription survived almost a century amongst the excavated rubble of the Piazza di Sciarra, when already badly treated by time and excavation. And why had the text, which Ligorio recorded intact and in situ in 1562, transformed and increased so dramatically in the interim? The key issue exposed by Donati's rendition is the conspicuous overlapping of letters and words with Wright's version. The latter's record mirrored much of Donati's reparation, but not his transcription. Wright was evidently unaware of Donati's work when writing his own book, and added it retrospectively to his appendix with an explanatory note. In his blissful ignorance of Donati's transcription, Wright had originally only reported on what he had personally seen during his visit to the Barberini Palace. Moreover, Donati's actual transcription differed to what Wright saw and reported decades later. The glaring inconsistencies and conspicuous similarities between both reports suggest that at least two versions of the dubious discovery existed by 1720. Furthermore, the overlapping of their respective transcriptions disallows for them to be reporting on two separate fragments of a single piece. What finally emerged from the Barberini Palace was CIL 920, which matched neither Wright's nor Donati's transcriptions. The piece appeared only as the left-hand section of the supposed Attic inscription. It conformed almost exactly to Donati's 17th century reparation, which Wright unwittingly recorded at the Palace Folly. However, it cleaved all of Donati's actual transcription and ignored the unique elements of Wright's also. In fact, it only dared share what could be deemed common to both: Donati's speculative reparation. The subsequent disappearance of these inscriptions, which Donati and Wright had independently and respectively transcribed at the Barberini Palace, was crucial and necessary after the creation of CIL 920. Their survival would have utterly undermined the fabled fragmentary inscription and the crucial and cryptic message it carried. Nor could either example be retained without implying that an entire inscription had been found. Whether Wright's entire rendition from the Barberini Palace garden or Donati's actual transcription conjoined to CIL 920, both controverted the professed discovery of the fragmentary inscription in 1641. Regardless, all three were cynically created to authenticate the spurious arch of Claudius and account of Dio.